topic tonight is free speech. How far can and should and must free speech go? We believe, Freiburg Institute, that this is one of the most central topics. It's probably, free speech right is probably one of the, or the basic democratic right. And yet, we don't want to talk only about limitations of free speech in other countries. It's always very easy to talk about limitations of free speech in, let's say, China or Turkey. We'd like to also talk about free speech in Europe. The reason why we're doing this debate in English is because it is international. It is part of an international network which is called the Time to Talk Network, of which our association Freiburg Institute is a member. This debate tonight is funded by the European Programme for Citizens, which we're very thankful for, as part of this international program. My name is, by the way, Sabine Beppler-Spahl. I'm the chairperson of Freiburg Institute. Right, and I think we'll have an exciting, interesting debate. Free speech allowed, everybody can say what he or she thinks tonight. So, I'll pass the microphone on to Kolja Tsidatis, who is a psychologist, and he also contributes to the magazine Novo Argumente. So, Kolja, here you go.
Okay. I quite like the definition of the US Supreme Court, which said the country which maybe has the strongest tradition of freedom of speech in the world, the US Supreme Court has said there must be a clear and present danger, clear and present, that these acts will actually be carried out. Then there would be the malicious defamation of individuals, so to say that public figure so-and-so is a pedophile, or illegal obscenities such as child pornography. These are, I think, not arguments against free speech, because in each of these cases the speech is not merely speech, it's connected to an action which any reasonable person would think should be illegal anyway. So I think there's a difference between merely speech and speech connected to actions, which, for example, would be the difference between expressing a general dislike of Albanian people or saying, let us meet tomorrow at 7 p.m. at this and this house where Romanians are known to live, and let's burn it down. Okay? So that said, excluding these cases, which I do not think are free expression, I think any statement or any human communicative or cultural output concerning literally any issue, be it personal, political, social, religious, or whatever, in any format, be it song lyrics, film, video games, should be free in the most literal sense of the word, as in completely unrestricted. And fourth, last but not least, I'm going to make a bit of a slippery slope argument. I know you're not meant to do that, but I'll do it anyway. I think, however well-intentioned restrictions on, say, hate speech can be, once you put into practice a machinery for censorship, it can be used for all kinds of purposes. And I think, sadly, often that will be to just simply repress information that the powers that be simply don't like to hear.
I'll pass the word on to Agota Reves. She is postdoctoral researcher at the Free University. She's also from Hungary. She's traveled through, she has lived and traveled in so many countries. She's lived in China. She speaks a tremendous amount of languages, including Chinese. So we're very pleased to have Agota here tonight. Okay.
So freedom of speech is not unquestionable, I think. It's exactly this quality of being able and having to be renegotiated all the time. That makes it so important. I think in a healthily working society, its members constantly recreate the domain, the room of freedom of speech. I also think, talking about the internet, that freedom of speech should not be anonymous. It's not a good thing, because freedom of speech is not an individual thing. It's not an individual achievement. It's not means for self-fulfillment. It should be a community issue. And it should represent communities and community issues. And if it has names, if it has communities behind it, if it goes through a kind of community check, it makes it a lot more relevant. So I think freedom of speech is not about the freedom to say whatever you want. And the fourth point I'm making is that especially talking about communication with China or on China, I find that freedom of speech is very often kind of product that has a political market value. We are creating a political asset out of it. And very often it's more about talking home. It's addressing the people, your own people, referring to something. You become a freedom fighter for people who might not need it, but the message is actually intended to reach your own voters. And that's just a cheat. It's just not right.
I'm Jewish and I live in Germany. One of the things that I was astonished to find was a very different attitude to freedom of speech here than there is in England, although I think we have a general problem in the West with more restriction on freedom of speech. But I would argue about Holocaust denial. I'm Jewish, I had members of my family who were killed in the Holocaust, but I think it is whether somebody believes or not, does not believe in the Holocaust is not going to change that. And the fact that Holocaust denial has this forbidden button on it makes it even more what happens all the time. I get into discussions a lot, mainly on the internet with people from all shades of the political spectrum. And the thing that the people to the to the right might ask about this is, well, why then, if you're so sure, of all your facts, why do you forbid Holocaust now? Why? Right.
Okay. My name is Adam. I'm from the States. I'm also Jewish, and I agree with basically what you said about Holocaust denial. I think it's shooting yourself in the foot. I would also say that I feel I've wrestled with these issues for 50 years because I've been a member of the ACLU in the United States for 50 years. At age 21, I found myself elected a member of the board of directors of Washington State ACLU because I was chairman of the student chapter. And this was in 1966 or something like that. My basic instinct is about free speech is that it is one of the most fundamental characters of free societies, and that we should do everything possible to protect it, but that there are limits when speech, as I say, becomes something more, actual incitement to violence, though that opens up all sorts of difficult questions.
I would really love to agree with you, but then I still look around the room and I think, okay, there's like 15 of us here. I think if this was happening at the O2 World, and there were 30,000 people there, and they were all really interested in this topic and really interested in getting informed and not being moved by, to me it's often a debate between stories and facts, and that you can really move people very easily with stories, but no one's interested in facts. Yeah, and I think that, I would love if there were more people who were interested in this topic and we were having debates on a large scale, but until we are, I don't know if maybe I'm also a little bit still in Brexit mourning, and so I've lost kind of maybe slightly faith in the common person, and that they act always after becoming fully abreast and aware of the facts before they make a decision, as opposed to just going with the lowest common denominator, as you said, Debatte.
Well, I'm from India, and uniquely India has taken up some Western cultures, which is the democracy and secularism and all of these. But we are still struggling with these. Well, democracy, no, but there are some other stuffs. Like we still have laws against LGBT, we still have laws where anyone speaks against the government, you can technically go to jail. So we still have quite large restrictions on freedom of speech. So in this discussion, what I gather is that one is ideally, rationally, freedom of speech is a good thing and it should be enforced, is what I see the consensus. But then there is the opposition coming from saying that the society is not yet mature for it. Society is cannot handle freedom of speech, and we as a society are not rational enough to take the idea of freedom of speech but not get incited, not get emotional and lead to action, but just grab the idea of what is being said. So practical aspect would be, how do we increase the rationality of the society, and so that freedom of speech can be more widespread.
I mean, and also to find an example from football, because that is now the topic of the time, right? When this person, I think Markus Söder from the Bavarian government, said that Özil shouldn't shoot penalties anymore, he also got a shitstorm, I think. And I thought he's absolutely right. Özil shouldn't shoot penalties anymore, and I'm not a racist saying that, right? So, but this is
You know, at first everybody was "Je suis Charlie," yeah, and then very quickly it started changing, and people were then saying, well, maybe these guys are a little bit responsible, you know, for having published these atrocious cartoons, and they were being very, very provocative, and I think that's where this kind of, you know, action and free speech comes in, because, you know, it sort of struck me how so very quickly. These people were murdered, you know, for doing things. You might say you don't like the kind of cartoons they did. That would be a good right. But since when is it okay to start killing people for things you don't like? I mean, that is atrocious. And in the middle of Europe, which calls itself liberal and free, and yet at the same time, rather than saying it's absolutely atrocious, absolutely out of the question, people then started saying, yeah, but these guys were being provocative. And I thought that was a bit shocking, and that's when I thought, no, we must do something about this topic, yeah.
Maybe everyone can try and think a bit about sort of history of humanity, how far we've come via Galileo, Darwin, thinkers of the Enlightenment, the suffragettes, the American Civil Rights Movement, and think about how many times, to what extent society has changed its opinion on so many things, and to reflect on the importance of free debate and cultural freedom. And I think that can include things like video games, like song lyrics, like stand-up comedy. That all goes under freedom of speech, of course. And just to think about how much things have changed, and wouldn't it be a pity if we gave up having the freedom to question and to be heretical, even if some of it is nonsense, but even if most of it is. Shouldn't we still value that?